Welcome to Art Obsession Studios, or Obsessed by Art, which is pretty much a description of where I am. Anyway, I'm sitting here in front of some paintings that I've painted, and I want to talk a little bit about the theory of visual art and painting and what compels us to do it and that sort of thing. So I'll start by what's influenced me. And when I was very young, I was, before I was 13, I was drawing on everything, all over the place. And by the time I got to be 13 years old, my mother said, wow, this kid is obsessed with drawing and he really should take it to the next level. So she enrolled me in an oil painting class, and it was at a high school with adults. So I was the only 13-year-old kid there. Everybody else was adults. It was about half and half, men and women. And unbeknownst to me, there was going to be a nude model in there. And I found this out later because the instructor turned out to be my high school art teacher. But because I was 13, the model showed up in fully clad in a one-piece bathing suit. So people were still able to get some of the basic form of the human shape, but they didn't get to see their nude model, I suppose. The guys looked a little disgruntled. But it was quite an experience for me. And I had had no experience before this, and it was an oil painting class. So it was there that I first fell in love with the tubes of paint. And, and some of them so very old, I don't think I might, I have some old ones around in my collection. Like, this is actually something from this design of tube right there. This isn't that old, but it is old, but it's not that old. But this is the kind of stuff you'd buy on the shelf. This is Golden Palette by Grummacher, and that was some of the stuff. And I just fell in love with it. The smell of the oil paints, because I guess the linseed oil or walnut oil that was in the paints. I just found the whole thing just absolutely mesmerizing, intoxicating, and so I spent a lot of time after that painting, but I was strongly influenced, even at that early age, by the Impressionists. And my art teacher noticed that because naturally I wanted to paint that way, but I was confusing myself. I was looking at photographs and I was trying to paint like the photograph, but the brush strokes were suggesting more of an influence from the Impressionists, who I thought were like the gods of painting. And even at that young age, Van Gogh was one of those artists that I looked and admired. In fact, I did a self-portrait of myself in the Van Gogh style, so kind of copying and imitating Van Gogh. But I never felt comfortable copying other artists. I really instead like to be influenced by them. And that's the thing that I want to talk, one of the things I want to talk to you about is try not to replicate what other people are doing in their techniques so much. It's a good learning process, and you should do it to experiment and get a feel for what they were thinking, feeling, viewing, and how that appeals to you, and how it might help you to find your own signature, we might say. So that journey to find your own signature, though, I don't think it ever ends. And I looked at Picasso and I saw some of the realism that Picasso had been dealing in, sort of impressionist realism, which is more where I am at today, I guess, kind of, sort of. But then he ventured off and he explored new territory, new terrain, broke barriers and went into places that other people hadn't entered before in art, that's what art is. Because it's not boring then. It's not the same as everything else that you see. It's different, it's creative, and it invokes a feeling. The viewer can look at it and get a feeling from it. Far too many simple landscapes out there. People copy, like the Group of Seven in Canada. There are lots of artists. They teach it in university, and grab a black canvas. I think I have some here, where the canvas is already black, or any kind of dark color, and even an umber, just brush umber over it, let it dry up, and then paint over top of that. And then you get this background. All the spots that are left showing through are not the white canvas, but they're that black dark. It makes it look like there's an outline around almost everything. You probably know the artwork I'm talking about. It's far from individualistic. It's not your signature if you paint like that. That was something that was done with the Impressionists in Europe, and it was something that was done extensively, I would say flogged almost to death. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not a nice image, and it doesn't mean that it's not a nice or valid technique. It's a beautiful technique. It's at its time, it was a groundbreaking technique, because every artist worked on a white canvas or a white panel of some kind, and then they put color over top of it. These paintings behind me were done on just a white canvas. This one, I drew in the figures with the edge of a filbert brush and cadmium red. So when you look closely at these characters, you will see this little fine glimpse of cadmium red poking out. So at this distance, it's not such a thing, but as you get closer, and at the end of the video, I'll zoom in to show you what I mean. So I'll point out to you some of those things. So if that's a part of your technique, whatever your technique is, that has to become your signature, as well as the style, but never stop exploring. Now, I've got these two pictures on display because they're behind me, and while I'm talking, you can kind of see that these are not exactly the same. Somebody might say, oh, I can tell that these were done by the same artist, but maybe not. So even I'm not really sure. I think it's something another person has to look at, observe, and say, that was all done by Billy, or whatever. But, there it is. So copying other artists and following their techniques is actually a really great learning idea. But somewhere in there you have to take all of those techniques, those approaches, the end result, which is ultimately the most important thing, and the subject matter, and you have to make it your own. It has to speak to you very, very strongly. So I'm just going to analyze this one for a little bit. This painting is something I was extremely passionate about, and in fact, very emotional for me to paint this. I can't explain to you in words precisely why this impacts me in such an emotional way, but I'll try. So first of all, this isn't something I just imagined. This is from Edward Curtis's photograph, which are now a part of the U.S. Congress Library. So they're public domain, these images. But Curtis was commissioned by Teddy Roosevelt, I believe, to go and capture what Teddy referred to as the American Indian at the time. And this particular group of people were referred to as Apache, but I think more accurately, Dene, the people. They called themselves the people. They didn't. Apache is actually kind of a derogatory term by other tribes against them, and they were embroiled in war a lot. But this picture is so emotional, because if you look at the clothing of these women, this would be very European. So 1903-ish, I think, 1903, a very grainy black and white, zero detail, horrible picture really, but because it didn't, time is not gentle on old photographs, and they were not that precise in their day, and then the reproduction of it that I'm looking at in a book is even less than all of that. So you have to imagine the colors, and so that is the exercise for me. Can I paint that and imagine the colors and that sky? It's so foreboding. And I see these people on the move. So I call the painting departure, and truly they're on the move. They were very nomadic people, especially at this time. It was a very, very difficult time for them. And so I have this deep emotional empathy and sympathy for what is going on here. I find so many emotions in it. And I felt as I was painting this, like I was bringing the spirits of these people back. Somehow I was touching them, that they were coming alive in color. I was bringing them back so that people could view them and see them in the color that they were in at the time. I hope I got that right. I'm guessing a green dress, but it could have been blue. But I didn't want blue in that painting because it would have been like a sore thumb. Maybe, But the green seemed to fit that earthy feeling so much better, Anyways, I'm very passionate about this type of subject matter to begin with. So to me, it was a very powerful image of a people displaced, forced to be on the move, under constant warfare on multiple fronts, and just watching their culture dissolve around them and being absorbed by European culture and having it become a part of their life. Were they comfortable in those dresses, or would have been more comfortable in their native attire, or was this something that was expected of them under peer pressure, like to fit in, to be accepted by the people colonizing their land? Did they feel like compelled to dress this way? So there's all these questions, and it just floors me when I get into it. I get too deep into it. So I think when I painted this, I probably even had tears in my eyes at some point in time, because what was happening, So anyways, that's one example. But it's not based on my subject. I didn't go out and take this picture in 1903, right? But I just love it. This image captures that subject matter on a level that few images, and I've scanned hundreds, I've looked at hundreds with my eyes, and this one was just amazing. I did another one like this. It was called the Winter Campaign. Asproki Winter Campaign. I believe people who were in the Idaho area, maybe a little further north perhaps, and they're on a winter scene. And so I did that, and I sold it really quickly. And anyway, so there it is. But you have to find something that, if it sparks that kind of emotion in you, you're on the right track. Now you're truly taking that journey that an artist endeavors to take, the one that feels like it's their journey, that it's emotionally charged, not just painting a landscape and here we go, some nice trees. I mean, I'm not knocking that, don't get me wrong. I'm going to be showing you how to do those things. Rocky Mountains, here you go. Here's a shortcut. Oh, you want to do a fir tree or is it a pine tree? And we need to know the difference because they look different. But anyway, this is kind of the philosophy and the theory behind art, is that we don't want our image to be boring. We want it to provoke deep thought if we can, or at least I do, and your journey may differ slightly than that. But I think universally it is held in all arts that we would like to surprise, and we would like to catch people's attention and not be boring. Right? So there's something of interest. Now, the painting that's in the distance, I thought would get me in trouble for sure because it ventured away. Locally, there's a lot of pressure for me to paint seascapes and boats and, because I live near the ocean. And it's like every time I go to the gallery that shows my stuff, they're like, yeah, it'd be okay, but do you have anything with a fish boat in it? Or how about the fish market down the road? It's like, hasn't everybody done that one already? So when I do stuff like that over there, this is stuff that's from my heart again. It's a deeper thing. So what influenced that is I was watching this old grainy recovered film from 1941 when the Germans had invaded Russia. And I'm watching this video and there's these images and the snow is blowing. You can't really see what's going on, but the feeling of that was 2 or 3 maybe, I think, in the original, these guys huddled together, and obviously they're about to perish or they're prisoners of war or whatever. And so I kind of modified that image some from what I could see, because I froze the frame on the computer screen and I stared at it for a long time, and I thought, okay, I got it. I want to add to it though. And so I went away and I drew this thing out. And I think I drew it out with Viridian actually, because I knew I was going to be in these really cold tones because it's winter and there's blowing snow. And I can't remember what I called it. I think first it was Ghosts of the Eastern Front, but I think Searching for Hope is the actual title. And I think that's what I settled on eventually. It's quite large. It's in the distance over there, but it's like a 48 by 36 inch. And again, this is something it's coming right out of me, a lot of it from my mind. Don't be afraid to do that. And people will hit you over the head with a stick and say, paint only what you see. And it's like, oh, okay, so I look at a photograph and I paint what I see. Well, technically that's correct. But spiritually and creatively speaking, how about if I paint what I see up here? Is that not correct? So I actually feel so much better when I paint things, images from my mind, and I can bring those people together, or bring the image together, or create the colors that I think were there. Then it has a piece of me in it. It's truly a part of me. It's not just a photograph of the fish market, which 500,000 people have already taken a really good photograph of, and probably better than ones I've taken, and then they painted it. And some people project the image onto canvas, and they paint with exquisite detail to get it photographically perfect, like we call photorealism in art. Okay, and I appreciate that as a craft. To me, that's like the skilled carpenter building you an elaborate cabinet, which boggles the mind. So is there any shortage of skill there? No, it's very high in its technical skill level. You're using some mechanical device, aperture, Lucidia camera type idea where you hold, and it projects an image. And what was that guy, Van Johan something, he did the girl with the earring, the ones I'm talking about, and the guy, and there's the mirror. I can't remember the names of these, but they were done by mechanical aid even back then, like 400 years ago kind of thing, 300 years ago. Artists were using these aids and things like that. Does it make them less of an artist? No. And if you think about it, back then, before the invention of the actual film camera, using such lenses and projections onto canvas to create things was a demanded skill, because people wanted realism. The market demanded it. The royals that wanted their portraits done demanded as much photorealism as they could get, even though the photographer, or the photograph, that type of camera, had not yet been invented. They were seeking that highest level of realism. So it became very, very scientific, mechanical, very skill leveled, and not as much in creativity. And this is why you see this enormous breakaway when we get to the Impressionist era, because in the Impressionists world, along came the film and the camera. And if you've ever seen photographs of the American Civil War, 1862, my friends, that's a long time ago, you will appreciate that now that we can just take a picture of something, the artist is almost an endangered species. So what will the artist provide for us going forward? Creativity, and thus the explosion of impressionistic art, which is so beautiful, because now we can capture the image, but we can create the impression with paint and let people know that's paint on there, not a photograph. So even though sometimes our impressionism may resemble photography, if you get close to it, you will see that it is not. So having said all of that, I think that wraps up this video for now. I want to keep it fairly short and to the point, but I want you to think, I want to provoke some thinking, that it's time for you, if you're more advanced, to start yearning to create your own signature in art. You have to start doing what's yours. Are these going to be my signature in art? I don't know. It depends on how long I paint for. I have stuff up here that I really want to do, and I've been holding myself back because, you know, the gallery said they want this, or there's a juried show coming up and I know that they only accept this genre, so I have to do it. I feel compelled to do it. But there's time for all of us, including me, to break away and start doing what's here in the heart and run with it. Okay, I didn't realize this was going to be as difficult as it is to get a good video of this painting, just because there's there's some glare on it, but I'll try and come in a little closer. So if I come in a little bit closer, you can see some of these outlines I talked about, but you can see that there's some very simple brush strokes, and some outlines are left behind in the clothing and the horses and stuff like that. So you just get a little bit closer here. You can see some of the colors that I've used. It's very simple. There's just some very quick brush strokes to try and explain what's going on, and you know, the clouds is just a little, the hint, or the sunlight hits some of those clouds, and then you know, and I put that blue in there just because I wanted to create a hint of promise, you know, the promise that maybe the storm would pass, maybe their condition might improve one day. And so that's kind of a little bit more of a close-up of what I've done with this painting. I noticed in the video it's really washed out, and I think I used too much light. But here I've got the spotlights are off behind me, and so the video is a little better. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, thank you, and please hit subscribe and like if you like this video. I'm going to produce more. And again, thanks for watching this channel.